Hello, everybody. Let's see. It says we are live. So how are you? It's Monday. Yeah, I guess Mondays used to be something. But hey, just another day in the week, isn't it? On planet Earth. Welcome, everybody. Just speaking favor over everybody. Hellos. Yeah, I was jamming a little Super Tramp and got to turn that down. So hello, Kaz. How are you doing? Susie Q, David Barry, my very good friend, Wendy, David Castle, beloved aspect, Bree, and everybody else. Michelle, good to see you. Abilene, Texas. There you go. Boy, what a weekend. We had some wind here on Saturday. I've never seen the wind. My neighbor has a complete outdoor weather thing, and I think we hit a gust of 78, and it was like for 30 seconds. It was wild. It was a interesting day. Hello, Twisted Isby. How you doing? Allison, good to see you. And Hillard. Melissa, hello. Carol, good to see you. Yeah, what a year. Isn't it, though? And here's the strangest thing. Snow tonight. Not where I live. It will be cold, but just literally 20 miles from here, snow. And it was like 95, 96 just on Friday. So it's a wild, wild world we live in. Hello, Robert V. How you doing? Good to see you. Stephanie. Hello, Cheryl. Good to see you. David Castle, Burning Ego. Thank you for the emails. Vortex of DEW. Good to see you. John Price. A lot of folks there from Abilene. Well, gotta love Texas. Lived there a long time. So, yeah. Anyway, happy birthday to those who are having one. Hey, anyone want to take a guess? Not a guess. Got to get that out of the vernacular. What do you see? That's the question. So we'll say, boy, I got a lot to do. I had a busy weekend, but I really appreciate the fact that we live in a time where information is available. In fact, I would probably say there's more information now available to the common man than any time in recorded history. Never has there been a time where if you hey, Kaz, you and I are on the same line. That's what I'm talking about. There we go. Hello, Nina the Mystic. Good to see you, dear. She'll be on Friday. Hal, Big Al, good to see you, sir. Kent Cook, hello. Good to see you. So think about it. Never has there been a time where the commoner, a pauper, could defy all caste systems, all class systems, and gain more knowledge than the wisest person alive 500 years ago. Literally. Now, you step back and you look at that in the evolutionary curve of Homo sapiens, it's going to have a profound effect, because with technology comes the curse. The curse is technology feeds off of humans' memories. How many phone numbers do you know? It's a fact. But the other side to that is this. Those who pursue the course of seeking knowledge can acquire knowledge that would have never been thought possible 500 years ago. And those of us, David Barry and I, are very much on this. He is as much an avid reader as I am, and there's many of you who are out there as well. And each of us have our own particular path, quest. Mine has been, why is it we don't know our origins? Why can't we remember our past? And what is death? We're all going to face that moment. And if you do a study, particularly in different cultures, Judaism, for instance. Judaism has it's just a bummer. Their belief system of when you die, Jack, it's over. There ain't no heaven for you. There isn't really technically a hell because hell doesn't exist. And we're going to be discussing that. Hell is actually a modern day phenomenon. Hello, Brad White. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. So death. What is the afterlife? Our ancestors, for the vast majority of time, when you died, that was it, Jack. Again, it's over. If there is something, you're basically kind of in the ethereal goo. As far as consciousness of ego, no. Mm-mm. The ability to separate personality, no. Kind of a bummer. Hinduism, it kind of goes all over the place. Really love that religion because it's, I think, really indicative of a lot what it really may end up being. Islam, I don't think it's heaven. It's a different place. And Christianity promises an afterlife, but here's the trick that we're going to be talking about: books. If you can't really been there and met the author, then you have no way of knowing that it was really written by that person. And does a God need to copyright itself? Or was there a way of those who wrote these books 2,000 years ago, did they copyright it in such a way that once you figured out what the copyright is, you could see that no one else could take claim for it? But getting back into the aspect of heaven, again, these are what have been taught, and you find out there's no foundation to it. A question I ask a lot of my Christian friends is that you say you're going to heaven. Where does that say that in the Bible? And describe this place called heaven from the Bible, because the Bible is the biggest spell, and it had subsequent additional, the Quran, many of the Book of Mormon. These are all fashioned off of something that we're going to find out never really existed. Spent a lot of time going through this. This is a great book. If you really want to get an interesting, it's John Sweeney's book, Inventing Hell. And all of us had to read Dante's Inferno. And it scares the crap out of you. And the reason why they require it in school is that because your mind is very malleable, to say. And so it starts you off down a road of saying, okay, there is now this contrast of this place called hell, very scary place. No, it was the imagination of a guy. If you really read Dante's Inferno, he's there to go rescue his chick. He wants coitus, man. That's what he wants. And, kind of a loose interpretation, but you get it. This is all make-believe. There's no foundation on it. And in today's culture, I don't care where you stand, theologically, ideology, your political views, because political views are tied very much to religion. How can you all be of the same religion but hate each other? Figure that one out, huh? So we're going to get into a book today that is going to be really fun. Let me first introduce the prep walk. Now, there are so few people who really truly understand history, understand what happened, because you have to understand there was something that what happened that took place right about that first century. By the way, what happened to the year zero? Can anyone tell me? Can you find any literature that was produced in the year zero? I mean, we went from what, 1 BCE to 1 AD. What happened to year zero? Anyway, I was once in part of security clearance. You had to go through several things, and one was a psych val. And the person said, what is today's date? And I said, according to whose calendar? And the person wasn't amused. Said, well, what is the today's date? And I said, well, I know what you think today's date is. But if you want me to be honest with you in your answer, I have to answer your question. I don't know what the date is. None of us do. That so typifies the fact that all of us live in an illusion, but we adjust to the illusion. We call it normalcy of cognitive thought, rational thought. It's still an illusion. Now, we have to really begin to understand how history has impacted us all, because you and I believe that there's an afterlife. Many other people do. By the time we get finished with this study, you may be questioning that, because there's absolutely no proof. None. But let's keep the illusion that we're all going to go to a better place. We're going to cross over into a portal, and we're going to wake up, and, it's all going to be, unicorns and pixie dust. And, we're going to go singing in the sunshine. Alexander the Great. It's a shame that today's students who I just read, they have a 70% deficiency. High school seniors graduating this year, a 70% deficiency in basic reading skills. Their cognition skills are way down. It's frightening, folks, if this is what the future holds for us. All right, so Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great changed the world. He absolutely did. This young cat, I don't know what kind of a mind he would have had. One of the brilliant strategists of all of Homo sapiens. His ingenuity, his intellect, his philosophy, his religious beliefs. Now, the interesting thing about Alexander the Great is that you would say today that he was a universalist. There was his sets of gods, and he got very involved into the Hindu gods right at the end of his life. And his kind of point of view with, the Greek belief system was that, hey, you can believe in whatever you want. This is your holy book. Fine. You can keep that. What we're going to do, though, we're going to bring you in to the family here, and we're going to make sure that you keep your belief systems, but you've got to understand at the dining room table, there are many others as well. And that's what he did. And from him, we get this guy, Herod the Great. This man, again, when you study these people and study the history and the influence that they started, that we are the recipients of today, it's mind-boggling. But this was another brilliant Homo sapien. Above IQ, which, considering a lot of their belief systems, incest was very common. But you know what? Homo sapiens are an incest species anyway. Yeah, I know. Gets a little weird, doesn't it? We don't want to talk about that. Yeah, sure we don't. But anyway, this guy built at Caesarea, the knowledge he possessed that they had in building the great ports, monuments. He had his subjects, which were in Judea, Palestine. They were educated. A lot of people don't realize that. That's why Rome was so infatuated, and the bromance between Herod, Patrice, his wife, and Rome. And Herod got involved with another group called the Flavians. Now, this man right here is your Jesus Christ, or at least his exploits. Yeah, the way they did this was really weird, but Flavius Vespasian. Now, you have to understand who the Flavians are. They are, from all my research, are one of the nouveau bloodlines. Bloodlines was very important to Vespasian. Brilliant general, quelled the whole issue of Judea, those rebel rouser Jews, cost him a lot of his men. And the interesting thing is that when we're going to find out, and when we're going to be reading more into this book, you're going to find out that everything is Roman. Everything. Now, they got the Greeks, they got the Egyptians. But for you and I, in our Judeo-Christian culture, this man right here, well, it's amazing how many people don't know about him. He was a brilliant general, later became a Caesar, later became a god. Yes, a god. This man knew Jewish culture better than probably most Jews of the day. You had to deal with them. And this is part of the great deception. I guess you could say that this man, I guess if there is an afterlife, then by us, the memory of him alone would thus make him immortal. 2,000 years after his death, and we're still talking about him. But not as much, because why? Well, you're going to find out that a playwright, when he does a play, is to draw you in, to make you captivated. Now, he can use this thing called topography, which allows me to take a fictional character in an historic time representing an actual living being. We call it the New Testament today, but this man still lived in that. Now, this guy, Flavius Titus, Tito, him and his brother we'll talk about his brother, just to let you know, there's his brother, Domenton. Well, they wanted to take after their father. In fact, Titus, who later became Caesar, petitioned the Roman Senate to elevate his father to God, to make him a god. And they did. Well, that made Titus the son of God. Now, Titus is responsible for the massacring of, I don't know, probably 2 million Jews. Where it comes to the official Roman record in Jerusalem, there is only one documented recording of a crucifixion, and it was ordered by this man here. On the hill, Ebenezer was the one who was actually crucified, the Roman crucifixion way, but he was also playing a role beyond anyone's imagination. Titus. What he did, which we will find out in the exploits, give me 1 second here, of the works of Joseph. Oh, wait a minute. Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian. We'll get to him in a second. But anyway, getting back to Titus, it took Titus 2 years to build the wall around Jerusalem. It's quite a feat. If you ever studied the way Jerusalem was laid out in the first century, was they had 12 gates that led into the city. Each gate had a particular religious significance. And actually, that is where the initial concept of hell came from, Gehenna, was that because outside one of the gates was Gehenna, the trash pit. It burned 24/7. You can see how it fits. So anyway, getting back to Titus, what he had his legionnaires do, they opened the city of Jerusalem to all those who were on their religious quest, making their pilgrimage to Jerusalem, to the temple, particularly in the high holy days. Because you see, under Titus, they weren't allowed to do that for many years. It enraged the Jews. And then Titus, by the goodness of his heart, said, well, sure, opened the city up. In the meantime, the building continued. And then the fateful day came in 70 AD, where Titus had all of them on Passover. Jerusalem had over 2 million Jews that had come in. And when he closed the gates, things got ugly. Very ugly. All part of the story. You read part of that story in the book of Revelation. Yeah, we'll get to that. His brother was right there with him and had his particular take with the problem. But this cat, Flavius Josephus. Now, when I discovered this a number of years ago, I said, what the hell's going on here? What is this Jew who was supposedly a general, or at least that's what he wrote in his memoirs, his autobiography, his historical account? It's the only one that really scholars refer to. What this man wrote, the War of the Jews, the antiquity of um, the Jews. I mean, quite a fascinating story. You begin to see why the four Gospels are written in a pro-Roman point of view. But let's get back to this cat, Flavius Josephus. So obviously you made the connection that I've already made. How in the hell did a Jew, a general that was captured by Vespasian of all people, suddenly take on a Roman family name? And as you can see, he lived very well. He didn't go without anything. Now, this plays a role because this cat is also one of the main contributors to the very spell that you and I are under. I mean, you know, you can be aware of it, break it, but it's still here. Philo of Alexandria. I read his philosophy. I got all of his books. And I at first couldn't figure out why I was drawn to this cat. You know, he was very Jewish. You know, he has his writings on Moses. Very interesting. Now, what makes this guy interesting was that his family was associated with the Herods, who just so happened to be associated with the Flavians. So you have the Alexandrians, the Herodians, and then you have the Flavians. Three bloodlines coming together. Now, this started something that the way the records show is mind-blowing. So, yeah, if we begin to look at this, give me 1 second, please. Let me get back to this one right here. I want to, as he pulls out. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Give me 1 second here. So I wanted to wrap up on this slide here because this is Christianity. And very few people have discovered this. Now, there have been a number of people, more and more have discovered, like I'm a layman in this. But I figured it out. Why? Because the material is available. So Josephus is hired by Vespasian to write the new myth Christianity. So you have Josephus, who is supposedly Jewish, who is yet working for Vespasian, Caesar Vespasian Flavian. That's like working for God. Now, he says, let me pull out of here. This gets really interesting because I'm convinced that it's this spell that is the problem we have today. Listen, we live in a country that supposedly is a Christian-based country. You got both sides of these quacks. One side, the right side, reading the Bible, and you got the quack inside the left side reading the Bible. Neither one of them live by it. Neither one of them believe it. But it's the influence. You know, hey, if you're going to patronize, you might as well do it all the way. So now, what I'm about to go through, let me get back to where I want to go because I want to show you, excuse me. We're really going to be covering a number of books. And if you want to ever start this study, let me, wait a minute, don't want that. Yes, I'm driving the bus just fine. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to be referring to a lot of books. This is Neil Freer's book, Breaking the God Spell, The Politics of Our Evolution, The History of the Near East, The Search, an historian's search for the historical Jesus. This was our book. We got this almost a decade ago. This started it really getting in depth. This cat, although he still believes in the myth of Jesus, he had the shock of his life. Gary Wayne's book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, we're going to be getting into this one, the true authorship of the New Testament. Arius Calpurnius Piso, or as he is known, Flavius Josephus, a Roman. What? Oh, yeah. The Two Babylons, great books, the original Christian gospel, Caesar's Messiah, all of these are part of this elaborate, complex fabrication. The Bible front, here's one, and this is a great book. It's one that if you really want to know, I like how you said it. So this is Pope Leo X. The Pope, who is quoted, how well we know what a profitable superstition this fable of Christ has been for us. It's all about money, folks. It's all about money. All of this is about money. And you can believe it or not, but it's all predicated on money. It's amazing. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme I've ever seen, but it goes back thousands of years ago. All forming this. So I think you're going to find this, particularly those of you who enjoy really getting into what this is about. So this is our book. It's one of those books. It's a small book. I mean, it really is. It's not that big of a read. I mean, in lengthwise, you really have to, though, really stop and absorb this thing because it gets interesting. So let's just start with this. So there's our character. So who is Flavius Josephus? This cat, folks, I don't care where you are in the world, has had an influence on belief systems, political systems, cultural, societal systems. If you go through the centuries, millions and millions of people have died because of what we think is gospel. This is going to really, really focus in on the fact that, well, who wrote the New Testament? You know, the thing that I could never rationalize in my head when I finally woke up, and it just, I don't know why I never saw it before. If you look at the book of Malachi, the last chapter, and then the first verse of the New Testament, which is Matthew, there is supposedly a 400-year period of no records. But that's not true. We know what the records are. Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great died in the year 333 BCE. Right in the beginning of this gap. But it's a gap nevertheless. Now, if you look at this from a theological point of view, eschatology we're talking about, I couldn't figure out, is that, well, no, wait a minute. You got this cat, this God in the Old Testament, who's a real son of a bitch. I mean, he admits that he's a murderer. He admits that he's a liar. He admits that he invented evil, created evil, is a God that demands blood sacrifices, both human and animal. And, you know, just, he says he's an angry, jealous God. Then we get into this New Testament, and then all of a sudden we've got this cockamamie theological Nouveau Riche hippie philosophy. Because now that angry God is Father God. Oh, yes, Father God loves you. Why, he sent his only Son to die for you. And he will give you the Holy Spirit to those who are worthy. And you see how this goes? So that's the big problem right there for me. But, you know, if you look at the Father God construct, it's Roman. And the Romans got it from the Greeks, and the Greeks most likely got it from the Egyptians. They all shared it. And that's why the Jews rejected it. Still do. They don't know any God as Father. None of this lovey-dovey crap, you know? So this is a good read. You're going to really, for those of you who are into it, you're really going to do it. The others, hey, tag along with us. You'll learn something here. Why we welcome you to the inner circle. The inner circle, or inner ring, is the most exclusive club in history. It has consisted of those religions, political, and literary leaders having the knowledge of the great secret. That the Calpurnius Piso family of ancient Rome created the fictional Jesus, the New Testament, the church, and Christianity. In welcoming the general public to this knowledge, the following introduction is appropriate. Originally, the explanation was designed slowly for the Jews, for the purpose of preventing their conversion to Christianity. It was not intended for Christians nor other non-Jews. No exclusivism was intended, rather concerned for the faith of others. The purpose of this booklet was to inform the Jewish Christians and the Jewish Jews of the true account of the creation of Christianity. In the first century AD, Jews were 10% of the population of the Roman Empire. Today, after 1900 years of suffering persecution, forced conversion, exiling, murder, and finally the Holocaust, the Jews are but 0.25% of the world's population. And today, Jews are being attacked by modern versions of the age-old problems. Firstly, there are a number of groups of what are called Messianic Jews or Hebrew Christians or complete Jews whose leaders are engaged in a twofold business. One, collecting money from the Christians. Got to do that. Let's see, who's ever done that before? Oh, yeah. Their churches and their Christian organizations. And two, using the money thus collected to evangelize the more confused and unsophisticated of their Jewish brethren into changing their religious affiliations to become Christian. Secondly, still today, other Christian groups continue to manipulate their readers and listeners by preaching hatred towards Jews. Some attack Jews by attacking the state of Israel. They claim that the Holocaust was a lie created by the Jews to justify Israel. They continuously present the account of the 1967 war attack on the USS Liberty with their cry of the Jewish conspiracy. Other groups claim that they, white Christians, Americans, are somehow descended from the northern 10 tribes who were carried off by Assyria in 700 BCE, and that they, and not Jews, are the modern day Israel, and that Jews are satanic rejectors of Christ and have no right to exist. All this is done in the name of Christ while the money continues to pour in. I was in that industry, built the first giving mobile app. When you start taking in billions of dollars, yeah, quite the operation. Anyway, I digress. This hatred towards Jews seems reasonable to many only because 1900 years of stereotyping the Jews has conditioned popular thinking to its acceptance. The hatred was deliberately created by the authors of the New Testament, as this booklet shows. Thirdly, our Arab cousins have seized upon the worldwide negative image of the Jews to likewise manipulate for power. They and their communist friends dominate the UN so that it spends 50% of its total time attacking Israel by every conceivable excuse. And it's really a joke there. Many Christians, as well as Jews, have wondered at this continued manipulation of hatred. We're seeing it today. You know, these protests, this is hate. Washington, D.C. is built upon hate. It oozes like a pus sore right now of hate. You got the two parties. I mean, it's just crazy. Christians have also wondered at just why the Jews did reject Jesus. They have doubted the Jesus story, but there were no answers available for their questions. Many have been clearly pleased to obtain and read this explanation. Therefore, it is to seekers of truth and all possible persuasions that we respectfully submit the information in this booklet. Praise Pizio. Now, do you know who the Pizio family is? You know, the truly powerful you'll never know their names. You'll never know their influence. The names that we do know are just merely for shelf decorations. And this is why I kind of like this book. It gets deeper now. The challenging proposal. There's a money challenge to here, by the way, at the end of this. If you can prove any of this to be wrong, they have ready for you. No one's met the challenge yet. A challenging proposal. If any group or person should feel its sincerity and or honesty is being unfairly attacked by this booklet, or should wish to challenge this thesis, we stand ready to publish debate on the issues of A, the actual authorship of the New Testament, and B, the proof that leaders know this great secret and use the information, which is code, in their writings. We start off with the true authorship of the New Testament's bibliography. 1, Rome, Roman Empire, Roman history, Jewish history, church history, Christianity, religion, Calpurnius Piso, Flavius Josephus. And we start our book, The Great Secret. This was 2,000 years ago. This is what it looked like. It's amazing to me, still to this day, we had the wonders of India. We had the marvels of the Far East, the Chinese. We had the records of the original people, the Aborigines. Yet, this pain in the ass place on the planet has been the pain in the ass for modern man. But in any case, should know who the players are. As we begin, the great secret, for there is nothing covered that will not be revealed. Matthew 10:26. Many of you who have a Christian background, you're going to really like this. The New Testament, the church, the Christianity, were all the creation of Calpurnius Piso, pronounced Piso. The Piso family, who were Roman aristocrats. The New Testament and all the characters in it, Jesus, all the Josephs, all the Marys, all the disciples, the apostles, Paul and John the Baptist, are all fictional. The Pisos created the story and the characters. They tied the story into a specific time and place in history, and they connected it to and with some peripheral actual people, such as the Herods, the Gamaliel, Roman procurators, etc. But Jesus and everyone involved with him were created. That is all fictional characters. A lot of people don't like hearing this. In the middle of the 1st century, now we'll keep on. Rome, the aristocracy, felt itself confronted with a strong growing problem. The Jewish religion was continuing to grow in numbers, adding ever more proselytes. Jews numbered more than 8 million and were 10% of the population of the entire empire, and 20% of that portion living east of Rome. Approximately half or more of the Jews lived outside Palestine, of which many were descended from proselytes, male and female. However, Judaism ethics and morality were incompatible with the hollow Roman institution of slavery on which the aristocracy fed, and which I don't understand that part, because the Hebrew culture is based on slavery. You got that back in Moses' time. But anyway, they feared that Judaism would become the chief religion of the empire. The Roman author Annius Seneca, the tutor and confidant of Emperor Nero, suggested in a letter to his friend Lucilius, a pseudonym for Lucus Piso, that lighting candles on Sabbaths be prohibited. Seneca is later quoted by St. Augustine in his City of God, although the quotation does not exist in Seneca's exactant writings, as charging that the Sabbath customs of that most accursed nation have gained such strength that they have now been received in all lands. The conquered have given laws to the conqueror. Ooh. The family headed by Seneca's friend, Lucus Piso, was confronted with, and by the way, you come in here and he gets all these side notes, and this, I have this on PDF if you want it, an allied problem more personal to it. They were the Copernicus Pisos, who were descended from statesmen and consuls, and from great poets and historians as well. Gaius Lucas Calpurnius Piso, the leader of the family, had married Arria the younger from her grandfather's name, Artabulus. This made Lucas Piso's wife the great-granddaughter of Herod the Great. Bloodlines. Repeatedly, religious-minded Judean zealots were staging insurrections against the Herodian rulers of Judea, who were the Piso's wife relations. Piso wished to strengthen his wife's family control of the Judeans. The Pisos searched for a solution to the two problems. They found it in the Jewish holy books, which were the foundation both for the rapid spread of the religion and for the zealots' refusal to be governed by Rome's puppets. The Pisos mocked but marveled at the Jewish belief in their holy books. Therefore, they felt a new Jewish book would be the ideal method to pacify the Judeans and strengthen their in-laws' control of the country. And a little backtracking on Titus. You see, Titus had inside information to be able to ransack the temple. I mean, those doors were some 30 feet, 6-8 inches, maybe a foot or more, solid bronze. I mean, and it was built to have hidden passages, and Titus knew exactly where to go. Took out all the utensils that were in the Holy of Holies, the menorah, the showbread. Yeah. How did they get that? And what we're going to discover here, and I'll give you some more background, they did this thing which they predated everything by 40 years. giving the impression that it was written sooner than what it was. One of the great mysteries has always been, how did Paul get his writings before the four Gospels? More importantly, how were the four Gospels written after they were all dead? I digress. About the year 60 AD, Lucius Calpurnius Piso composed the Marcus, the first version of the Gospel of Mark, which no longer existed. He was encouraged by his friend Seneca and assisted by his wife's kinsman, young Perseus, the poet. Nero's mistress, later his wife, Poppaea, was pro-Jewish, and Nero opposed the plan. The result was the Pisonian conspiracy to assassinate Nero, detailed in the historian Titus. But this attempt failed when he aborted the plot. Instead, Nero had Piso and Seneca and their fellow conspirators executed by forcing them to commit suicide. Gotta love history. He exiled Piso's younger son, Aras, who appears in Tacitus under several names, including Antonius Natalis. Nero sent young Piso to Syria as governor. That post also gave him command of the legions controlling Judea. His own history records his service in Judea in the year 65 under the name Gaius Florus, and in 66 with the pseudonym Sentitus Gallus. This Aris Calpurnius Piso deliberately provoked the Jewish revolt in 66 so he could destroy the temple in Jerusalem. For the Jews were unwilling to accept his father's story and thereby became pacified by it as it was intended. However, his 12th legion was caught by the zealots in the pass of Beth Horon and almost lost. Nero's reaction was to exile him instead to Pannonia to command the legion there. I mean, you think if he screwed up that they would cut his head off. No, he's getting commands. To send Licinius Musenius to serve in Syria and Vespasian to Judea to put down the Jewish revolt. Then in 68, Nero was assassinated by his own slave, and here's the great one, Titus, who, unknown to his master, was young Piso's lackey. Galba became emperor and named Piso's cousin, Lucianus Piso, as his intended successor. The Galba, in turn, was soon overthrown by Otho. Otho was then overthrown by Vitalis, at which point Piso and his friends began to flock together against the latter. The Pisos, the Vespasians, the Minuses, now I'm misspelling that. Actually, that's not misspelling, mispronouncing it. And Tiberius Alexander, Philo's nephew, all joined ranks behind Vespasian to seek to overthrow Vitalis. Now, I know this sounds dull and mundane, but it's critically important. These characters did live. There's a history here. Again, the title is, Can You Trust What You Read in a Book? Well, you can read about what may have the person did by an observer. None of these penned anything, but they did live. Their exploits are there. So now we've got Vespasian rising and ascending to power, and now we got to get rid of Vitalis. So Arius Calpurnius Piso was still commanding the 7th Legion in Pannonia, that's Austria and Hungary, and Vespasian sent him, now appearing in Tacitus, and that's the historian, with the name Marcus Antonius Primus, south across the Alps to overthrow Vitalis. Meanwhile, the main body of Vespasian's legions marched overland under, and I think that's Mucianus, from the east towards Rome. Piso succeeded in defeating Vitalis' army and secured Rome for Vespasian. Mucianus arrived and promptly sent him to Judea to help Titus at the siege of Jerusalem. He did so, and in 70 they assaulted the city, then the temple, burned it, slaughtered many thousands, and sent thousands more to slavery, to the gladiatorial combat and death. You have to read what Josephus wrote is what happened in there. It got really bad. I mean, you had mothers eating their children. Yeah. Then Arius Calpurnius Piso wrote in sequence the following. He wrote the Gospel of Matthew between 70 and 75 CE. The present Gospel of Mark, about 75 to 80. The Gospel of Luke, with the help of Flavians, and younger, 85 to 90. In the Gospel story, he inserted himself by playing the role not only of Jesus, but all of the Josephs as well. He particularly enjoyed assuming the identity of Joseph, wishing to create a Jewish hero, a savior, in fictional form. He, and then his father before him, felt the identity of a second Joseph secretly, but very aptly to fit them. Now, what Joseph are we talking about? Going to be very interesting. For their name, Piso had the same 4 letters rearranged as the 4 Hebrew letters Yo, Va, Shmut, Shemet, Fe, which in that language spelled the name Joseph. Thus, they saw themselves as the new Joseph. That is why so much of the story of Joseph of Egypt is secretly redone and inserted into the gospel story of Jesus. And this is quite fascinating. So you have the Jewish Jesus, the Jewish Joseph. This is in the book of Genesis. He had 12 brothers, spices on the camels. Joseph flees without his cloak from Potiphar's wife. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Brother Judah suggested the sale. Background was Egypt, bondage, and slaying of the firstborn. Miriam is sister of Moses, whose story is sequel to that of Joseph. So if you look at this and you transpose it over into the second Joseph, or Jesus, how do we have the similarities? 12 disciples, spices of the Magi. And remember, Magi, they want you to think that that means wise man. It's magician. Let's just cut the crap. The young disciple flees without his cloak when Jesus is arrested. Jesus is sold for 30 pieces of silver. Judas sells Jesus. Background was flight to Egypt to avoid Herod's slaying of the male children. Isn't it odd how the story unfolded? Why did Joseph go to Egypt? In fact, I had one historian that wrote, Miriam, by the way, translates Mary, is Jesus's mother. That no one in their right mind would have ever made that journey. I mean, you're going through the freaking desert. I mean, yeah, anyway. Now, the Jesus figure, which Piso creates, is a composite. He inserts redrawn elements from Joseph in Egypt and other Jews of the Bible, elements from the Essenic writings and characteristics of various pagan gods. Easter. One of the highest holy days for the religion of Christianity, Easter literally is the sex goddess. And it's at that time that the Luciferian prayer and ceremony is carried out. Why I am so into this and have been for a very long time is that I was one of those people who actually believed that the Bible was history, authentic history, never not realizing that the Bible is not an historical book. It is a literary book, fiction. But look what it's done. And the reason why I'm getting into this is that because you will see that same Godspell, that same curse is into the metaphysical community. And the ways that it has now evolved, it's organized religion, just on a different level, different basis. Why? Again, you can either take it that these guys were ruled by aliens, there was a higher power influencing these people, but when you actually start seeing how they wrote this, it's nothing more than a play. You know, Francis Bacon, Shakespeare. Yeah. Piso plagiarized the Hebrew scriptures, especially he loved and borrowed freely from the prophet Isaiah, whose 44th chapter was most helpful. Piso's idea to make Jesus a god to whom to bow, worship, and pray came from Isaiah 44:17, and the idea to prophecies in that Gospel of John and in the writings to the church fathers. The prophecies fit Jesus for the same reason Cinderella's slippers fit her feet. The Jesus story was deliberately written in such a way that it would fulfill the prophecy. See, you know, folks, you can write a book. If you know the ending before the beginning, then you know exactly how you can manipulate the story to arrive at the conclusion. The whole book of Matthew is predicated on detailing how this mystical character is fulfilling all of the prophecies of the prophet Isaiah. But if you're writing the story that you already know what the prophecies are, it's very easy for you to fulfill the prophecies. Oh, man, I have really gone over. Well, okay, we'll just stop there. Boy, I'm getting carried away. All right. So there we go. For what it is worth, I hope that it was exciting for you. Maybe not exciting, but maybe educational. It is for me. Al, how you doing? Yeah, you know, Big Al, let me tell you what. Don't I wish I had the tithe back? If I only had. Yeah, yeah. Lynn and I have sent more people over to Israel, and we've never gone, but we have sent, and you know, yeah. I'm just reading on it. Well, thank you, Darth. It's, you know, listen, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for those of us who go through this, and when you, and like I said, I've finished the book. It's a fascinating read because it makes so much sense to see why things are in such the condition they are. I mean, if this was the true way, then you would never have the Great Schism of the year 1514. And that was when Protestant and Catholicism split. But how can we still have the same God? I mean, folks, you know, that's the quest that I continue to see. That's why, you know, I can't say that there is a singularity of a God or a Godhead. Don't think it exists. And that becomes a conundrum. And I know, like I said, a lot of people don't like to be taught that there is no such thing as hell. But nevertheless, boy, You see what happens when I really get into something I really dig, and I really dig this subject. It's really a good one. Hello, Susan. There's a lot of us who are wishing to get that money back. Yeah, it's like, man, I want to sue on false pretenses. It's like, wait a minute. You told me that this was the way that, I really appreciate all of you folks. I mean, thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow with Miss Trina, and probably get into some things I'd like to get into, and I know I'm way over, on soul contracts. It appears to be a real thing. So we'll see about that. I'm sure Miss Trina may be up to it. Kent Cook, thank you. Hell is Earth. I think that you may be right. Heavy mind control. Yes, Matt, it absolutely has. Yes. Allison, yes. I mean, that's a very interesting thing. How this whole thing with Revelation. Did you know, by the way, that Martin Luther wanted to put the book of Revelation, burn it? Like he said, it was in direct opposition to what was taught in the front of the book. And I went, wow, he really got it, didn't he? So anyway, all right, folks, thank you for being here, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.